So when we bought our boat, it was a big investment and we wanted to be as prepared as possible, knowing that we're on a tidal river and a working river and that flows into a sizable body of water, the Salish Sea. We just wanted to make sure that we understood, and the first thing was the tide. And a lot of people we've noticed here when they come with a new boat or from a different area and they've had a boat, they don't realize the impact that the tide can have on the boat and when you can and can't go out. So I'm going to show you a couple of things now. So I've got a docking pole here and I'm at the end of a dock that's closer to the shore than our boat, and if I put the docking pole in, it hits bottom right there. So I've got 3 feet of pole left over. I'm over at the end of the dock now, and if I put the docking pole in, I don't want to go too much deeper because I'll lose it, but you can't touch bottom with it. Now, where our boat is here, at the lowest of the low tide, I cannot touch the bottom with that docking pole, and the docks there, specifically the one where you see the boat with the red stripe, those docks will actually hit bottom and will rise up because the water is about a foot deep there. So if you come down to this marina and you aren't aware of the depth of the water and the effect that the tide has on that, you could damage your boat. When there's a high tide, larger boats like that cannot get under that bridge. And so when you are coming or leaving this marina, you need to plan on the tides when you have a larger boat. A boat our size, or like that one in the middle, are okay. But the larger boats need to plan on when the high and low tide are. So once you have figured out the marina and the water depth at various tides to protect your boat and your motor, you have to consider out there, so not just the bridge, but you've got various other aspects out there that you have to be aware of. You can have a long stretch of water, 30, 40, 50 meters, that looks navigable, but it's not because it's so shallow. We have an app called Wave Boating with 2 V's, and it does for boats what Google Maps can do for cars or Waze can do for cars, and it shows you the depth of the water pretty much everywhere at the lowest tide. So you just do the math at whatever your tide is and you know what the depth of the water is in a particular place, and you can pinpoint your direction and where you want to go, and it will tell you whether you're safe or not. It also gives you wind direction, temperature. It's fantastic. There are other apps like that. That's the one we use. If you do happen to run aground, it's not difficult to damage the motor, and the leg, which is the bottom part, is not cheap. It can cost 10 grand to fix that, and even if you just wreck a propeller, that can be $500. So if you hit bottom and it's just mud, you might be okay, but if you hit bottom and there's a log in the sand on the bottom, like that could really cause a lot of damage. And if you're going a little faster, you could damage the mounting of the motor on the back of the boat. I've talked a little bit about what a flooding tide is like here, and our observations are that the water doesn't really start coming in as soon as the tide begins to come up. It takes an hour or two, and then you really notice a flooding, a really strong, powerful current that comes from that direction. And of course, it's affected by the docks and the positioning of the boats, but it pushes strong into there and pushes our boat over into that far dock. And so that's another aspect of the tide, is that you have to plan on what the current is doing when you're coming into dock. For us, it's far better if the tide's going out and the wind is coming from that direction, but obviously you can't plan on everything. There are other aspects to going out that create a good window for you, and maybe the wind or the tide aren't perfect for you, but the weather is. So you go out and then you have to plan on that. Most people know that the tides are the effect of the moon and the sun on the oceans, but really tides are super long period waves. The period of the wave is 12 hours and 25 minutes, and the length is half the circumference of the earth. So a typical wave at a beach will be, say, 40 meters with a period of 12 seconds. So in the open ocean, tides don't really have much of an effect. It's where it comes into the shore and geographical features that it really has an impact. Another aspect of tides is that when they're flooding and you get certain winds, you can have effects like standing waves. So at the mouth of the Fraser, for example, with a flooding tide and strong northwest winds, you can get standing waves of 10 feet high that you have to try to navigate. So that's something that you need to look out for. But the high tide is the crest of the wave and low tide is the trough. I'm far from an expert on tides. Just a little bit of information for you to use when looking at your own situation wherever you are. My history with tides is I surfed for 12 years in Tofino on the west coast of Vancouver Island, and knowing the tides made a huge difference to whether or not you should even look at the surf. But they had a massive effect on the push, the shape of the waves, the height of the waves, and so it really is something. But I'm not an expert. Do your own research and take into account the specific location where you are to determine what you need to do and how you need to manage the tides.